And we continue Newsmaker now with Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard. Sheriff Allard, thank you for calling in.
Hi, Brian. How are you this morning?
Doing well, and yourself?
Oh, doing fantastic. Thank you.
Well, Sheriff, a Campell suspect is accused of going on quite the vandalism spree, most of it in the Corning and Riverside areas. What was it, 30-some cars that were damaged? How is it that you caught up with a suspect in Campbell for these allegations in other towns?
It's one of those things that an alert deputy put two and two together and responded to a similar type complaint from a different date in Campbell where there was security video that was a little bit better than what we had seen from the previous ones, and she actually recognized the person in the video from a person in the Campbell area, was able to locate him, interview him, and he admitted to the Campbell one, and she brought him in for a further interview with an investigator, and then he provided information and admitted to doing the Corning and Riverside ones.
I imagine in the days where there's security cameras all over the place, it's a little bit more risky to go around vandalizing these days.
It really is, and honestly, for investigative purposes, that's one of the first things when you think about technology. We're looking at closed-circuit TV, security TV, Ring cameras, and what their phone shows. And it's definitely a different world when you go to investigate this type of crime.
That's very interesting. You know, we see those on the police shows. I happen to watch Blue Bloods with Tom Selleck and Donnie Wahlberg there. And, that's not to compare a TV show to the real-life thing, but, that is one of the things that pops up on Blue Bloods a lot is going through the suspects' phones and looking at the video footage. Talking to Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard, there's a couple of driving under the influence of drug arrests in our newscast today. Wondering, with COVID-19, are we seeing more of that or less of that?
I believe we're seeing more drug and narcotic sales all around. Hornell PD had their arrest of a pretty major trafficking in the city here a couple of weeks ago. We had an arrest in coordination with the Village of Bath Police Department where we took almost $45,000 worth of crystal methamphetamine off the street there in the town of Hornellsville. We had another arrest just the other night up in Savona with a person that was using methamphetamine and carrying it. From what we're seeing, and when I talk to our narcotics and investigators, is that there's a segment of the population that's definitely taking advantage of the reduced coverage during COVID.
That's very interesting. The Livingston County Sheriff's Department had an arrest that we have in the news this morning, and the suspect was released. The sheriff posted up on the press release on the Facebook page that the suspect was released. It was a 41-year-old Rochester drug dealer suspect, and he was released, they say, because of the new bail reform laws. Bail reform and COVID-19, you talk about the drug dealers taking advantage of the lack of coverage out there with law enforcement. How about bail reform and COVID-19?
That's incredibly frustrating. Even the changes to the bail legislation that's in this year's state budget really doesn't address that. And it doesn't go into effect until, I believe, July. But we're seeing the ones we did or the arrests we made in the town of Hornellsville, were all A1 felony arrests released, mandatorily released at arraignment. The only one that was, in fact, held was the parole violator. One parole violator one person on parole that was released, reoffended 2 days later, and then parole violated his parole also. So they're both in jail now, but outside of that, they could continue to do A1 felony or A felony level offenses and mandatorily be released under the bail legislation.
Yeah, I hear you there, Sheriff. Well, it's Nurses Week and Corrections Officers Week. Your thoughts there, Sheriff Allard?
Just two groups of unsung heroes in our county that really need our appreciation and need a thank you. The work that the nurses have been doing throughout the pandemic has been incredible, and again, our correction officers are the ones behind the scenes keeping us safe every day. So both groups are true heroes and really need to be commended and recognized publicly for all that they do.
Talking with Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard, you had an app, a new app from the Sheriff's Department, came out about 3 months ago. Wondering how that's going.
It's going really well. The first week, I think, when I checked with the vendor, we had over 23,000 hits on it the first week that it was up, and we continue to use that and continue to push information out through it. Between that and our Facebook page, we're reaching a really good chunk of the population with what I feel is very relevant information regarding what's going on in the public safety area for Steuben County.
Speaking with Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard, getting back to a point that you made a little bit earlier in this interview about the increase in the drug problem, wondering, does that also go for DWIs and underage alcohol sales?
We haven't seen or received data so much on the underage alcohol sales, but again, impaired driving across the board has been up. Our enforcement has been up. Even during the pandemic, we're still averaging probably 4 DWI, 4 DWAI combination there per week. And that's definitely, I think as people are at home and they're becoming affected by the quarantine and becoming frustrated, as we know, folks that are prone to addiction turn to addiction in those kinds of times. So I've said this many times over and over. I still believe that addiction and all that goes with that is the number one public safety issue in our county.
Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard, how about gun arrests, violations of the SAFE Act or otherwise? How's that going in the COVID period?
Haven't really seen any of that. We've had a few domestics that involved weapons, and we've had a few suicides that we've had to investigate that involved weapons, but we haven't really had any SAFE Act violations that we've had to investigate, and we haven't had any arrests regarding that area. You
talked about suicides there, and you talked about weapons being used in the suicides. Overdoses is a topic that comes up in the news quite frequently with heroin and fentanyl. What are you seeing with the heroin and fentanyl use these days? We're still seeing a pretty good spike in that. We're seeing a lot of batching where fentanyl is mixed with other things, and overdoses resulting from that. Sometimes it's known, sometimes it's not known when it is mixed or to the level that it's mixed. And we're seeing an increase since, and when not to keep going back to the bail legislation, but since the change in bail legislation, we've seen a definite increase in overdoses in the county. All of the programs that we put into place in the jail and through drug court to help folks conquer their addiction, get into recovery, and avoid overdose. Those programs were basically gutted by the bail legislation. So we have seen an increase in overdoses. We have seen an increase in fentanyl-based overdoses. We've been speaking with Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard. Down to the last 60 seconds or so, any final thoughts, Sheriff?
Just encouraging everyone to stay safe, maintain social distancing. I think we're on the right side of the curve right now with the pandemic, but we can't let up. We've got to continue to be safe, mask up, keep social distancing, and help everybody keep everybody safe.
Steuben County Sheriff Jim Allard, want to thank you very much for coming on.
It's always my pleasure, Brian. It's good to talk to you.
Great speaking with you, Sheriff. We've got St. James Hospital coming up next with CEO Brian O'Donovan and Dr. Rob Shaw and Dr. Ismail Mayer. Stay with us.
The Ryan Agencies, your local, independent insurance agencies. Online insurance companies don't know the unique needs of our rural community. The Ryan Agency meets rural needs every day.